Well, I'm started on the Volkswagen. I'm not going to take a lot of video because I want to get it done, and I enjoy listening to music when I work. But I got the driver's side spindle ball joints apart, and I'm going to pull the steering arm off and take the spindles and the tie rods all out at the same time, I think. That way I can work on these on the bench. And it turns out you can't take these off because they're under pressure until you get the spindle out, and then they're loose. So I'm going to pull these out so I can take the ball joints out, work on those in on the bench. I'll have to take this stabilizer bar off. Now this is the one that was loose, and this ball joint actually feels pretty good. It's pretty tight, you know, in the joint, but the boot is all torn, and that's the one that had the loose nut. This one was tight, but there's a lot of, I don't know if the camera will see that end play in that slop up and down. That's bad. So that one is probably where most of the clunking is coming from. So that will probably fix most of the clunking, but I'm going to do the other side too, just because I got the parts, and that way it's done, and I know that everything is kosher on the front end. I know it's not going to fall apart, you know, a ball joint come out or something and cause me to wreck. Well, there's the whole front end of a Volkswagen, pretty much. I couldn't get this shock off from that arm. The metal sleeve is rusted on there. I fiddled with that for probably 15 minutes, couldn't get it off of there, so I just took the whole shock out with it. Doesn't matter. And I couldn't fish this whole thing through under the body, so I separated it right there. It actually came apart pretty well. And pulled this one out that side and this part out that side. And there isn't much left under here. Pretty much just an empty hole. These are the torsion bars here and here. They're actually laminated. You can see it better on the other side. There's a lot of grease on that one. Yeah, you can see the different laminations of the bars. I always thought they were a solid bar, but they're not. And those are basically go all the way through to the other side, and then in the center they're bolted. And there's a bearing in here, or bushing or something, that the arm keeps the arm tight. And this shock has been replaced, and I would guess that they were going to change the other one also and couldn't get it off of there, so they didn't. But the shock itself seems okay, but probably eventually I will change all four of the shocks, but not right now. They seem okay. They don't, you know, they're not loose or leaking or anything, but they should all be the same. And that's a KYB, and I think that's a gas shock. And from what I've read, they recommend that you do not use gas shocks on the Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah, see, this is not a gas shock. So you can push that up. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe that's just the weight of it, though. Gas shocks have got pressure in them. So when you push this one down, it comes right back up because of the gas pressure in there. But anyway, I'm going to go on ahead and change out all four of the tie rod ends and all four of the ball joints, and I'll get back with you. It took me about 2 hours to get this far. That's right from taking the tires off right through to here. So that's not too bad, really. 2 hours to disassemble the entire front end of a Volkswagen, minus, you know, beating out the tie rod ends and stuff. But, okay, we'll go from there. Alrighty, we got some new parts on. I got both of the tie rod ends on the driver's side. I think that's the driver's side. Yeah, that's the driver's side, the short one, because this is a steering box. So both of the new tie rod ends on there, they were almost exactly the same spacing between here and the end of that as the new ones. So I marked this with a file at the end of the shaft, and then threaded the new one in so that the same distance between the pin and the filed mark on the old one lined up with the end of the shaft. So the alignment should be pretty close to where it was. Eventually I may get it aligned, but this will be close enough, close to what it was. And we've got the new tie rod end on the outer passengers, the same style clamp as the driver's side. And then this is where the steering stabilizer goes. It's basically a little shock. I got the old one right here. And this end is a little different. This is, the end of this is tapered, and then this nut is not actually a nut, it's just a tapered cone that fits over the end. And then when you draw this up, of course this is threaded on the inside just like these. When you draw this nut up, it pushes this tapered down on, which squeezes the end of that. And I think the reason that they did that was because of the clearance. Just turned around here. Because of the clearance right here where the steering stabilizer goes. The clamp, if it happened to get turned, if you needed to turn that to adjust the steering, so that the clamp ended up being this way, it would probably hit that steering stabilizer. So that's why they use that. I didn't take this off and put this on the new one because it shot. I mean, it's all bound up, it doesn't move very smoothly, and it squeaks, and there's no shock value at all in there. Well, there's maybe a little bit. So it's not working anyway, so I'm not going to put it back on. I'll probably order one if I can find one fairly reasonably, and then put that back on, put a brand new one on. That I should have ordered one, but I didn't know if this one was bad or good, and so yeah, I didn't. So anyway, it won't hurt to not have it in there. It just takes some of the shimmy out. Well, hi, you come over to see? You're going to be right in the middle of my way. But anyway, we're making progress. Probably won't get it done today. It's about 3:20 Saturday, March the 17th. Probably going to clean up here in another half an hour or so, but I'm going to work on some of the ball joints to see if I can get any of them out and replaced and go from there. Well, I got one ball joint out, and I ended up actually breaking it when I was taking it out. It's kind of weird. It's got an oblong hole in it. I'm not sure that the new ones do. Of course, I can't tell because the boot's on there. But they do have the same notches in them. And the notch doesn't really correspond with that slot, but it almost does. And I've marked where the notch was on here, and that would put the slot this way, which seems strange to me because there is a notch right here that was already in it, and I would think that the notch, that the if there is an oblong hole in the new one, that it should go this way, because that's the way that the suspension travels. There shouldn't be any movement side to side, or very little. Most of the movement needs to be this way, so I would assume that the notch should be lined up with that mark. Now, I looked in the book, and the book says if the ball joints are wobbly, take the arm off and take it to your authorized VW dealer and have them put in a new ball joint. Yeah, well, that ain't gonna happen. So I actually made a tool that it's got this grinded out spot here to give clearance for this, and that's the same size inside as the ball joint. Well, almost. It's got a little chewed up, but there it goes. So when you pound on it, I actually put it in the vise and squeezed it as far as I could, and it had started moving. It actually moved out about halfway, and then it blew the back out of the ball joint. So then I put this on the floor, propped up the end of it, and beat it out with a pipe. This pipe is actually just about the same diameter as the inside part of the ball joint, so that actually drove it right out just fine. I cannot believe there's mosquitoes out in March, but I've got the bearing part that goes into the axle covered up with this bag to keep filings and dirt and stuff out of the grease, so I don't have to clean it all up to put it back in. But it is 20 after 4, so I'm going to quit for today. I probably won't upload this till I finish the job, so you guys will just have to wait. Alright, it's Sunday afternoon. It's about 3 o'clock. I've got this lower ball joint pressed in, this lower ball joint pressed in. I haven't done this upper yet, and I'm working on the upper in here, and I thought I'd show you guys how I do this without a press. This is the setup I got. I made this aluminum block. I had cut this out of the transmission adapter for the Dodge, and it was just in my scrap bucket, and it's good and thick and rugged, so I bored a hole in the center that the ball joints, the lower ball joints will actually slide through. The upper ball joints are a little bit bigger, and that's the ball joint right there. So this actually presses on that edge of the ball joint here and presses it in. I'm using this socket as a spacer just for clearance around the stud part of the ball joint here, so that that doesn't get messed up and it doesn't mess up the boot. And then these actually stick through the other side of this arm, so I've bent a piece of just some key stock to take up the space there. And basically what I do is I got a cheater pipe on my vise handle. Be careful when you do this. If you get the wrong angle and you get out close to the end, it'll slip off and you can get hurt. But you're not going to put that much pressure on it. You know, you draw this up just about as tight as you can draw it up before the shaft will start to bend, and then tap. I tap on here a little bit with a hammer, and I tap on here a little bit with a hammer, then you'll get another quarter of a turn on the handle, and you just keep pressing it in that way. It's not ideal. You know, ideal a press would press it all in nice and straight and even, all in one pass. But I don't have a press. Maybe someday I'll get one, but this works okay. Do the same thing when you take them out. I put the spacer on the other side. Or how did I take this out? Actually, I drove this one out. These upper ones actually come out really easy. The lower ones are a pain in the neck. You have to fight the whole way out. But on the uppers, I just set the vise a little bit wider than the shoulder on the ball joint. Sat it on the vise here, and use this socket, which fits down inside that arm, and just basically drove it out with a hammer. A couple good whacks, and then it just tapped right out. The lower ones you have to press out and use the spacer, and I used this axle nut socket on one side and this socket on the other side, you know, and just drove them out with the vise. Same thing, crank it a bit, whack on the vise with a hammer, crank on a bit. That's how I broke the one I showed earlier in the video. Too much pressure, but it did come out. So this one's done. I'm going to take it out of the vise, and I'll try to do it without dropping you guys. I got you on the strap here, but and there it is. New ball joint pressed in with my vise. So I'll do the other one, and then it'll just be a matter of putting it together. Making progress. I just wanted to show you guys another little quick secret. There's a special tool that goes between the lower arm and the upper arm to open these up so that you can get this ball joint to go into the socket. Well, of course I don't have a special tool. So just took a piece of plywood, cut a little rounded out spot out of there, use a floor jack. Jacks it right up out of the way, just fine. And you can tip this right in and set her down right into the socket. And I think the book says there's a notch in these, and that notch, I think the book says it needs to go forwards. So I will check that before I draw that nut up. But just a little hint if you're going to try this yourself. Hi, are you helping? Alright, we got the front end all put back together. Got the hubs on. The brakes are still adjusted from when I did that last time. So now it's just a matter of putting the wheels on, dropping her down, and taking her for a spin. There's the inner tie rod ends, outer tie rod ends, of course the ball joints. I don't have the steering damper on there. Like I said, the one that was on here is no good. I'll probably order one. That goes up underneath there. But other than that, then we'll have to get back to the radio and putting all this back together.